Yeah. So there is something that I want to talk about when it comes to this. So I think that the way it is being framed as it being an organized called offense versus it being freestyle it's not misleading, but it's because I don't want to say that's what it is. I think it's lacking some context and it requires some contextualization. What we're seeing with the offense that we're creating is with you have to take the step in between, right? So when we say you're running organized offense, we'll talk about it the way that Twitter is talking about it. Okay, there is freestyle offense and there's organized offense, and the points per possession that people, according to the folks who believe that there should be more organized offense, that when the Lakers run sets, the points per possession that you're scoring is at a higher clip than what you're getting from freestyle offense. Okay, that's fair. That's data. That's not something that you can really argue with. That's just numbers. That's totally fine. And the problem is that the argument is that the distribution of freestyle that we're running is way too skewed in the face of freestyle offense when organized offense is clearly leading to more points. So this is the part that I wanted to contextualize, where if you watch the Lakers, which we know that all the folks in the detailers club, we know our detailers do this. When we have watched over this past 10-game stretch of basketball, 9-game stretch of basketball where we've gone 8-1, and I'll ask you this question: has the quality of our shots been high, medium, or low when Luka and LeBron are doing their freestyle offense?
Yeah. That's what's interesting. At least when I'm watching it live, it feels like we're getting good shots, right? And that's just what I feel. The data can say some interesting stuff. My guy LA Bound has put out that
Yes.
the amount of open shots that we're getting actually isn't relative like to the rest of the league in terms of the amount of open jump shots and dunks that you get. I also think personnel matters here as well, right? And I think we've had 8 games or 9 now of Luka, LeBron and Austin together. So, I think that kind of impacts too the open shots. Some of those are going to Vando. We're doing a lot of the goon units, which which are units where
it's 4 defenders and LeBron.
Exactly right. So
Luka,
even if they get an open 3, they probably aren't taking it, right? Yeah. And so they're driving in and creating offense and just playing bully ball. And there's a style to that's helping the Lakers win games, to your point, in terms of the defense that they're adding, that they're attributing. But to me, it looks like it's been consistent, and maybe that's just Luka's brilliance that he's doing that, and LeBron's brilliance to be able to take open shots. But again, I think and Luka's being blitzed and all that type of stuff, and it feels like we're getting good looks out of it. And I think JJ has made the point, and he's been consistent about this, Vinay, is we're getting good looks. Like, our offense has been, like, JJ's been very clear that the offense has been good, and we're getting great looks with it. And I agree with him. I feel like the offense has been fine. Now there's ways to improve that for sure. I think where they're at in their journey is how I'll put it with this team. I think it's on the correct point of the trajectory, right? And there's a ceiling to get to still. There's still an improvement that can be had in terms of what they'll run. And, I think Luka will learn where his teammates want the ball, what actions go best, right? This is a process that a team that hasn't had no training camp. Like, again, if you watch OKC and Cleveland today, it's very clear those teams are on gear number 9 of
we know
10.
who they are.
We know exactly. We can do this in our sleep, right? We can be asleep and run all the actions. And the Lakers aren't on that. They're on like gear 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And to your point, they're winning through that, which is impressive. You give them credit for that. But there's a gear 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get to. And I think that's what most people are looking for. And I don't think you'll see that right now. And with LeBron out, I think you'll definitely not see that until we get, later stages. But it's an interesting conversation of
So you bring up 2 great points. One of them was one of the ones that I was going to bring up. I do want to bring up your other point. The Lakers are running, when we're measuring this, we're not measuring this based on only on the end result, right? The end result matters, but we're also, when you and I watch it, we're measuring it based as when we watch them run lineups, like when they run the Luka plus 4 goons or LeBron plus 4 goons. When they run that lineup, like, what is the purpose of that lineup? What are we trying to do with that lineup? And we've seen, like, in both Clippers matchups, when we ran those lineups, nobody was going to shoot the ball other than Luka or LeBron in those lineups. That was the purpose of those lineups. We're going to let you ISO ball, which LeBron did that first game masterfully against, like, Zubac and Bogdanovic. And then Luka torched it from the start. He was torching Zubac from the start. They had a game plan for what they wanted to do offensively. And sometimes that may result in contested pull-up 3s, contested pull-up 2s for LeBron and Luka, which, if you're looking at it from a data standpoint, I understand why you would make the argument that that's a worse shot than a wide open Austin 3 or a wide open Gabe 3. So that's one I think you put it really nicely the way you described it. That's one very, very big piece of context that I think folks have to be willing to accept. You might not want to, but I think that is something that you have to accept because the Lakers do run lineups where even the opposing team knows there's like only one guy that can shoot the ball, like one or two guys that can
Yeah.
shoot the ball. But they're I don't think JJ is doing that just cause. I don't think he's just like, yeah, F it. Like JJ is a smart guy. He knows that you have to have shooting on the floor. But there's also a reason why Dalton's like the only other shooter on the floor. And there's
Hmm.
like three defensive guys. I think there's a reason for that. I think JJ is still learning who can he play and trust in specific lineup combinations. That's going to be something that might happen all the way up until the playoffs start. That's one thing. The second thing is this, Raj, and I pulled the data for this because I thought it was important for us to understand. The argument that getting wide open shots for Gabe, for DFS, for Rui, for Austin makes a ton of sense. For Connect, it makes a ton of sense. I agree with that. I think wide open shots for those guys are fantastic. But when we actually look at what's happened over these past 9 games for the guys who are getting wide open shots, that paints a different picture. Again, we're looking at not just the start, organized versus freelance, and the end result when it comes to points per possession. We're looking at what's happening in between. What is the cause as opposed to just that raw data point? And over these last 9 games, I thought, I wonder what these guys have been shooting on wide open threes, because that's a good point. If we're getting them wide open threes, they should be knocking them down because we
That's
statistically
the
that
whole
would make
point.
sense. That's the whole point of what you're saying. And we know that the freestyle offense can lead to that. And we know our freestyle offense leads to medium to high shot quality, at least on the 3-point line, because of the gravity that both LeBron and Luka have. So I pulled it. Dorian Finney-Smith over the past 9 games has shot 6 of 23 on wide open threes, 26%. So he's
Yeah.
missing wide open threes. Okay, that's fine. Let's move down the line. Austin Reeves missed 2 games, so you have a little bit shooting 42%, 43% from on wide open threes, 9 for 21. That's fantastic. I
He's
don't
been
think
excellent.
anybody's disagreeing that a wide open Austin 3 is a bad thing. I think that even Luka and LeBron probably want that to happen. But the next guy that gets mentioned, Gabe Vincent, shooting
He struggled.
4 of 17 on wide open threes over these past 9 games. Again, not huge volume. You're talking about 2 to 3 threes a game.
Yeah. But I
That's
think
20.
all 4 of Vinay were against the Knicks, or 3 of them were against the Knicks.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
take
3 of
that
them.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like 1 for 11 in
yeah.
the last ones.
And that's at 23%. So already you're 3 guys who have taken the most wide open threes of anybody else so far. 2 of those guys are shooting sub 25% basically or worse. So my thing is, if the freestyle offense is to utilize your all galaxy creators to command that double team or command that extra help, which leads to the open 3, and those threes are not being knocked down, that's going to drive that points per possession down. And I understand why you'd make the argument to go the other way. So let's continue to go down the list. Rui Hachimura, 6 of 15, that's 40%, but he's only played 4 games. So now you understand the value of why we have to have Rui in that starting lineup. Because if DFS isn't knocking them down, we don't have really anybody else to go to that's at
Right.
his same size and that can do that. So we haven't had Rui for those games, so that's it. Believe it or not, Raj, Jared Vanderbilt, 5 of 13, 38% from on wide open threes. All of his
Wide
threes are wide
open.
open.
There
Yeah.
needs to be another number for Vando wide open. It needs to be a separate selection where
You should get extra points. Make him worth
team
4 points.
leaves the premises
Yeah.
so he can shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. And then even we don't have to go all the way. Like Luka himself, 3 of 13 on wide open threes, 23%. So it's just LeBron's been
Yeah.
great, 36. Dalton's been great, 36%. But Dalton's been in and out of the lineup because of his defense and stuff like that. So you don't really get it. So my whole thing, the whole point of all of this, this offensive segment is obviously we've seen that number come down. We've seen the net rating come down, and we've seen I've seen we shared in the chat. We see the conversations about organized offense versus what it is. And again, I'm not trying to dispute it. We're trying to figure out like what is the real issue here, because it can't just be as simple as JJ's not calling enough plays. Because I feel like if that was it, I feel like JJ's a smart enough guy to be like, now let me just call the plays. I can't just let this guy keep doing this because it's not good for us. There is a part of this where we're specifically running lineups where defenses kind of know it's going to LeBron and Luka because we're stagnating guys in and out and learning each other. That's one part of it. We saw that with the Clippers matchup. But the other part of it is these guys are just not making their wide open threes. And if they're not going to make their wide open threes, that numbers, that points per possession for that freelance offense is going to come down. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason why that's happening. We've had some ugly games. I think it showed its head in Boston. But we just spent 45 minutes talking about that Boston game, Raj. And what did we say? The defense looked great. We just couldn't make our shots. We had open shots and we couldn't knock them down. And I think that's something that the Lakers hopefully are able to remedy as it continues to go on.